Hey friends, this is Waynell. I hope that you're having an amazing day. I wanted to come on for just a moment and share a little tidbit with you. If we're just meeting each other, I want to say hello to you. My name is Waynell. You're inside of that Sunday School Girls channel, and I make content, Christian content that is inspired by our Sunday school lesson stories. I really believe that Sunday school is not just about going somewhere on a Sunday, but Sunday school literally is life. And so inside of every lesson, I believe are lessons that we need for life living. So if you want to check out my full Sunday school lesson this week, you're welcome to do that. It's on this channel as well. I'll try to remember to put the link in here for you. But today I wanted to talk about advocating for yourself, advocating for yourself. And advocacy is something that sometimes can feel a little difficult because you literally are not only having to speak for yourself, but raise arguments as to why you believe something should be the way that it is. And we all have lots of opportunities for advocacy. And essentially, advocacy is this: you are working to either change your position, to change the position of the other person, meaning like their thoughts about a thing, perhaps even getting someone to move on your behalf. And so we have to think about how we use our words and how we use our spaces. And we find ourselves advocating in many ways. From children, right? We learn how to advocate for small things. Can I go over to my friend's house? And we use the things that we believe are leverage. My room is clean, my homework is done, all those things that may get a parent to change their position. So we learn very early on to advocate, but seemingly as adults, that can seem a little more daunting when we are in what I'll consider larger opportunities. So again, anytime you are in a situation where there is a decision that is being made on your behalf, or that there are conditions that affect your well-being, it is best for you to speak up and to speak on behalf of yourself, to speak powerfully for your own rights and assert your own interests. Now, again, I'll say that a lot of us will shy away from advocacy just because it feels like confrontation, right? And a lot of us, that's hard. Like, we don't like the feeling of confrontation. And at the same time, if you don't advocate, it seems like we end up either holding the short end of the stick, or if you are in like a really unique situation, sometimes advocacy is needed because it is what is going to change sort of the future of a thing. It is going to change the way that other people go through a process. So it's not just fixing an issue that deals just with you. It may be something that fixes the system going forward. And so you notice even in the world, there are lots of spaces where we are advocating, whether it's human rights. I'll especially even talk about Black women in medical spaces. Like, we have to advocate for ourselves. Your pain is real. The things that you feel in your body are real. And sometimes you'll have physicians who say, oh, everything looks fine. No, if you don't feel right, if you don't feel right medically, you've got to open up your mouth and begin to advocate. And especially in the workplace, this is going to be very helpful if you're someone that's navigating a career. And there may be times that you're either trying to navigate things like titles in your role. You might be trying to navigate a promotion. You might even be trying to advocate if you're accepting a new role, and you're advocating even for things like your salary, for your benefits, for those things that how you will work with your team. How you use your words matter. And again, we see all of these inside of these Sunday school lessons that we study. And so I was really thinking about that this week. Advocacy can be difficult, but it is definitely something that you can learn how to do. So I think when you think about advocacy, you've got to remember and embrace, first of all, who it is God has created you to be. And when you show up in spaces in the wholeness of what that is and understanding you, that will really help you. And you've got to keep in mind that as you advocate, advocacy is not revenge, right? Because the Bible tells us that vengeance belongs to the Lord and he'll repay. So it's not revenge. It is not about self-promotion. It is about receiving the value or receiving the benefits or receiving the rights that are due to you. So it's not about self-promotion. And I just believe this, like, God is not giving us bonus points for being passive. And I know a lot of times people sort of have this weird misunderstanding that Christians will not stand up for ourselves or that we won't advocate. That is not true. In fact, the Bible even talks to us. Look at Proverbs 31:8 and 9. It even talks about advocating, not even on just behalf of yourself, but sometimes we even advocate for others. So I want to share just a couple things. I'm actually on a break from a meeting, but I wanted to share sort of my thoughts and my reflection as I looked at advocacy this week. And again, these are inspired by the lesson where Paul is before King Agrippa, and essentially he has to defend himself. He has to advocate for himself. The first thing I'll tell you when you have to advocate for yourself is you've got to be prayerful. I believe this, that God gives us how we are to move, where we are to move, what words to say. He does it in the moments that we need it. He may even give you the strategy before you go in. So if you know that you've got a conversation with a manager, even in your church spaces, if you have a conversation with a pastoral leader, ask God, first of all, to give you the right strategy, the right words, and the right temperament. I'll definitely say when you go into conversations where you're advocating, your attitude matters. So, we have to watch things that are really impulsive, hot-headed, remembering that words that we share, we can't take them back, but we can use our words to inform our conversations and empower our spaces. The second thing I'll tell you is that you've got to be confident. When you're advocating for yourself, you're going to have to be confident. And that definitely means being assertive, again, showing up and being informed. And we'll talk about this in a minute, informed by the value that you bring or informed by your rights. So being assertive. And honestly, sometimes advocacy, especially when I go back to this idea of like medical advocacy, like assertive sometimes means I know, I need, and I'm not willing to just walk away with, passive words from anyone. I won't be dismissed. I think that's the way I want to say that. So that's what I mean when I say assertive, but also being confident in who you are, confident in, if it's a workplace, what you bring to the table, confident in your ability and your capability. And sometimes building confidence happens in those moments that we take every day, like as we build our confidence in what does God's word say about you. Sometimes you'll build confidence in terms of affirmations. So I'm a person who likes to read affirmations. Many of you know I have a coloring book that's on YouTube, on Amazon. And I love to read the affirmations in there and to literally sit with it, sometimes even visualize things before I'm in a space. Sometimes I'm journaling, and even if you're going to go into a face-to-face conversation, sometimes even how you dress makes you feel a certain way. It makes you feel powerful. So think about all of that. And again, know your worth. Like, what is it that you bring to the space? What do you bring to the table? How is the space made different because of your presence? That will help you build confidence. The third thing is understanding yourself, your value, and what your needs are, and even what your rights may be. And that was a lot that is loaded, but let me talk about, for example, the workplace. If you're advocating for yourself in a workplace, you need to know what's required. How have you met those requirements? If you're advocating, say, for a new position, or you're advocating for even salary, you've got to even have records. So what work have you done? How have you increased productivity in your work area? How have you made things more efficient, more effective? What can you show? What do you build in terms of a portfolio that allows you to speak to your work, that allows you to speak to your value, that allows you to speak to why you are a difference maker where you are? And again, keeping these records is about you, but it's also about the story that you are able to tell about the work that you do. I'll talk about records in another way, because I know, again, we've talked about there are different spaces that you may advocate. So work records and records of things that you've done help in the workplace, but maybe it's a medical situation where you need to advocate. Again, as simple as a regular doctor's appointment, I'm that patient. I keep copies of everything that was printed out for me. I can look at this year's blood pressure versus last year's blood pressure. I can look at this year's blood work versus last year's blood work. And I'm always looking, if there are vitamins, I go in with records from my doctor. Here are the vitamins that I'm taking right now. Bless God, I'm not on any prescribed medications. And, if I am doing anything, I'm drinking these smoothies right now. If I'm going into the dentist, I know those things. And so I am keeping records. I keep the things that they give me. And at any point, if I have to advocate for myself, I can always go back to the conversations that we've had. Medically, though, I've also found that very helpful, because that same, as the young people say, that same energy that I have for myself, I remember advocating on behalf of my family, specifically like when my father, and at one point my sister was hospitalized. I don't take no for an answer for those that I love, and I can always go back to the records. So even as doctors made their rounds on the day, you got your clipboard and your chart, I got my notebook and my chart, and I can always go back to the record, and I can go back to, yesterday you said that if this number didn't move, we were going to do this. Well, it hasn't moved, so what are we going to do today? That is advocacy, but it always cites back to the records that you've kept. So make sure that in the areas that are important to you, that you keep records, that you keep notes, and you can always go back to that. And think about what really matters. Like, what outcomes are you trying to drive? The outcomes that you want will tell you what records you need to keep. And also, just like in the Sunday school lesson this week, you need to know your right to an appeal. If the answer doesn't work out, you need to understand all that you need, but also know what your right is to appeal. Know your value. Again, this is, about knowing, and we just talked about records, but since you know records, always be able to rehearse like an elevator speech, your top 3 things that you do. Who are you? What do you bring to the space? What experience do you have? What do you do really well? If you had the elevator speeches, if you had like 20 to 30 seconds to ride with the most influential person, what is it that you would say? Those are the things that you need to keep top of mind and always be able to just like spit those off. All right. So that's the next thing. Finally, I got 2 more for you. Next thing else to know is like, who are your allies? Whenever you're advocating, and again, any space, if it's work, if it's hospital medical, if it is church, if it's friendship, wherever you're advocating, you should know your allies. Where have you built genuine relationships? Who is on your side? Who will speak for you? Who will reinforce the message that you are trying to share? So know who your allies are and make them a part of your deliberation, and if necessary, even part of your conversation. Next, I need you to know that you should expect some opposition. Anytime you're advocating, remember, you are trying to change your position. You are trying to change the other person's mind or their position on a matter, or you may be trying to get someone to move on your behalf. But again, you should expect that there may be opposition. And so how are you prepared to kind of move in and out? Generally, when you're advocating, and that's why I go back to records, if you go back, not just to your feelings on a thing, like your feelings inside of advocacy sometimes make it hard to move the needle, but the records become things to which people are responsible. They're responsible to records. So that's why you want to keep records, and always know, even as you face opposition, go back in with your facts. Always drive in with your facts. And you'll see this in that Sunday school lesson from this week. Go back and look, but drive with the facts. Finally, never, never, never stop pushing for yourself. Never stop thinking or knowing that you have value. I want you to have a determined spirit, and always know that no this time doesn't mean no forever. It may mean that you need to go back and put in the work. It may mean that inside of that conversation, you learn, if it's a job, you did not get the role because you didn't have experience in this place. You may find out that another person has done something more than you. No informs how you will go back in the next time. So I want you to keep a determined spirit. And if a no is a no, and I'm going back to medical, if it's a no that you cannot live with, have a determined spirit that's going to say, you know what? Since I know my right to appeal, I'm going to go to the next level. I'm going to take this to the next person. And I'm not going to stop until either I have the outcome I need or I have an understanding of a plan that's going to get me to a place that I feel better about this process. And again, this is all so present in the lesson that we studied this week on Paul going before King Agrippa. Go back and look, and I'm definitely very interested in your thoughts on advocacy, where you might actually be thinking about things that you can do better. How can you better advocate for yourself? And you can let me know that in the comments. I love y'all so much, and I pray that it is a super fantastic day wherever you are. Make it a great one.